We need all of them. We need the person that, makes and spins and dyes the yarn, and then someone to come up with an idea and me to check it, and someone else can make it really well. And, it all works together.
Hello and welcome to the Yarn Over podcast. I am Sarah Jane, your host, and today we're going to be talking to Emily Reiter from Fiat Fibre Arts, and we're going to be talking all things tech editing. Now, here's a true story. When I first started to crochet, I would make up my own patterns, but I didn't really have any idea of how to write a pattern properly. And really at the time, how to read a pattern. I would put some stitches together and create a pattern, but didn't really know the ins and outs of pattern writing itself. Fast forward a few years, I would start to put together my own patterns, but I didn't actually know what a tech editor was. In fact, the first time I heard about a tech editor, I was like, how have I not been doing this before? I found Emily. She is now my very own tech editor. And the very first time that I got a pattern back from her and all of these notes were on it, I was cringing inside because I realized just how much I'd been doing wrong. But over the years, I've really got to know what my pattern style is, really got to know more about how to write patterns. And that's just come from having my patterns tech edited and realizing what places I was going wrong. So without further ado, here is Emily. She is a mum of 5 and honestly, her brain just amazes me the way that she can process information. I'm so excited for us to delve in deep today and talk all things tech editing.
Have you heard the news? My How to Crochet Handy Reference Guide has had a revamp. This 26-page ebook with exclusive video instructions is perfect for beginners or those who love to have all the information at their fingertips. Get yours now at www.bellacococrochet.com/ebook.
Hello, Emily. Welcome to the Yarn Over podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hello from Texas.
What time is it there?
It is 9 o'clock in the morning.
9 o'clock. We are, 3 o'clock here. So yeah, there's a bit of a time difference, isn't it? We had a bit of a time trying to figure out what the time difference was, didn't we?
Yeah, but not my first rodeo, we'd say, about that. I have a number of clients in different parts of the world, so I've had to do the time coordination thing a few times, and it's weird.
Yeah. It's hard to get your head around, especially when they change the clocks, which they have done for both of us, haven't they, just recently? But I'm really excited to, one, speak to you kind of face to face, because we haven't done that before, have we? It's always been via email. But two, talk about a subject that you are excellent in, which is tech editing. So first of all, can you tell us, what is tech editing exactly?
Sure. So tech editing, like a book editor, is the person who reads through a crochet or knit pattern and evaluates it for your basic grammatical errors, spelling, punctuation, normal kind of things like that, but then also on a crochet or knit level. And I specialize in crochet tech editing, so that's what I'll reference. Crochet has its own kind of punctuation and its own unique language. And so I like to say I edit in 3 different languages. I'll edit in English, in crochet, and then I edit in math, which is another language. So I will go through and see that what you're telling the maker to do is going to result in the stitch count that you have at the end. And then also I will evaluate if what you told them it would be, and then you give them the instructions. Do those instructions actually make what you told them it was going to be? And that gets into gauge and other things. But basically, instead of actually stitching the item, which is what a tester would do, I'm just reading the pattern and then either drawing it out. Sometimes I draw stitch diagrams to make sure things are going in the right place, or I'm just visually, mentally building the item to make sure that it's making sense when I read the pattern. And this is all so that your brilliant and beautiful design comes through clearly to the reader so that they can make a beautiful item. And that's my goal, is just clear and understandable patterns so that people can make pretty things.
Do you know, it's so impressive what you do to be able to look at a document and just pick all of those different individual elements out to make sure that it's working. It blows my mind. I think you must actually have something in your brain that mine does not, because mine does not work that way at all. So well done to you, because
thank
it
you.
truly is amazing what you do.
And what I've discovered is that the people drawn to tech editing are definitely a certain kind of personality type. Usually, like, we're going to be perfectionists because you have to be able to see all those little details and errors and mistakes, and something's just out of place. So it's someone that pays attention to that in the first place. And then, but it is different from a lot of designers. There are a lot of designers that are really good at math and really like it and like the intricacy of it. But then there's a lot of designers that are just very creative types and just want to come up with a really neat idea and do their best to put it down on paper. So it is a completely different type of personality and person and skills that works in these different facets of fiber art.
Yeah.
We need both of them. We need all of them. We need the person that, makes and spins and dyes the yarn, and then someone to come up with an idea and me to check it, and someone else can make it really well. And, it all works together.
It really does. It really does. And I definitely fall into the latter of what you said there. Is I'm the creative that doesn't like the maths so much.
Yeah.
And I was always like that in school as well. Maths has never been my strong point. So you are essential to me.
That's fine.
But it's really important, isn't it, to check all these details, because it can make a huge difference to the user who's looking and reading that pattern, and what they eventually end up with. You can make a small mistake, which then has this knock-on effect, can't you?
Right. It definitely has a big effect on what the maker is going to do. But what's important for the designer is that maker, it's going to affect their impression of you. So do you want them to have a good impression that they were able to make something easy and they're going to come back to you for another pattern? Or are they going to, you're really good at taking pictures. I abhor taking pictures, but if a designer is really good at photography and they take a beautiful picture of a beautiful item, but they can't explain how to make it, the next time someone sees a pretty picture, they're just going to go, I don't know, I couldn't do the last thing she said. So I'm not going to bother with this one. And you're not going to get those return customers.
Yeah.
So for a lot of designers that live off blog hits and, web traffic, you want really good patterns for someone to want to come back and see you again and again.
Absolutely. So tell me then, how did you become a tech editor? How did you fall into it?
So for me, I did start out as a tester. I have 5 children. And so this was back when, I think around the time I only had 3. When I had the first 3, it was in less than 3 years. And I had massive pregnancy and postpartum anxiety and depression after the 3rd one. And so it took me a while to come out of that. But part of what helped me was medication, for one. Don't be afraid of that, moms.
Yeah.
and going to a local embroidery guild of America club that was in town. And I had put down needle and thread when I had my first child. And I never had it out much after that because there were needles. I didn't have needles around with walking around babies and stuff. So I didn't pull it out. And by the time I did, after that 3rd baby, when I was coming out of my fog, I realized how much that just fed my soul, just doing something with needle and thread and something in my hands and making something. It was so enriching. And I started getting more into crochet and doing things then also. This was early in the blog life of crochet designers. And after making a lot of toys for the kids and other kinds of things, I was able to get on a tester group for Lorene Eppolite of Creation Crochet, where she has an 8 in creation. And so I was in her tester group, and I would report about the patterns that we were editing. And I noticed that sometimes when I would put a comment in the, on the Facebook group that we were chatting in about something, other testers would say, "Oh, yeah, I saw that too, but I just did blah, blah, blah," kind of thing. And I thought, well, that's not really my job, is it, as a tester? I mean, my job is to like tell her if something's off, not just fudge through it and keep going. Mm-hmm. So I kept, pointing out the things that I saw. And after a few months of this, she was just like, "You really need to think about being a tech editor." I had no idea what that was. I'd never heard of it before. And so I was like, okay, I don't know, and she was like, "You really need to think about this and maybe talk to some yarn companies or something." And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, me, random, no experience, like Red Heart is going to pick me up as an editor after that, like I had no background. And, but then after a few more months, she sent me one pattern and just said, "Can you look at this? I don't know if there's anything wrong with it, but you always find something. So here." And just gave it to me with that much confidence. And I was like, okay, and I just read through it. I didn't make the thing. I read through it and I sent it back to her. And then a few months after that, for part of Lorene now is working pretty much full time with Furls Crochet that makes the beautiful
yes,
ergonomic hooks. And so at the time they were doing like Furls Crochet along, and there was a pattern that had some problems, and she sent me an email and said, "I really need you to tech edit this pattern. I will totally pay you for it. We need this done." And that was like the first paid thing. And I was like, "Ooh, wow. Like I'm for real doing it." And I read through that one and did it. And then the following year, I just decided to go ahead and fully present myself as a tech editor and try to ask for jobs. And I asked, I was in another group. I was thinking, am I going to design and tech edit? Like maybe I'll do some patterns. So I was kind of feeling both sides of that. Like, what do I need to learn to go down the designer path? And what do I need to do for the tech edit path? And it was really splitting my focus. But because of it, I was still in groups with other burgeoning designers, like early designers. And so I was able to ask to edit some of their patterns in exchange for a testimonial. Like if they were happy with my work, they could just say, "Yay, Emily's great." And then if they came back to me again, then I could charge them the next time. And so I just started off doing that and kind of promoting myself some as a tech editor, and just started to have return business, and then started to have requests from other people. And then I was able to, I put myself on, tester tech editor groups where I could say, "Hey, I'm here if you need a tech editor." And there are a lot of designers that are like, "What's a tech editor? And how is that different from a tester? And I don't understand. Why would I pay you?" And things like that. So it was really Lorene and Lorene's confidence in me that helped to push me into this. And I will say, for my background before mom life, before crochet life and everything, I've got a master's degree in science. I went away to a math and science high school 2 years early out of high school. Like I went to college 2 years early, effectively, so wow. It's like I have a really strong math and science and data, and I love data entry. I had tech jobs doing data entry, or like temporary jobs doing data entry, like before in my college years. And like, I love everything about this. So once I finally was like, yeah, I'm going to be a tech editor, between myself and my husband, he was like, this puts all of your superpowers together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's really amazing about it. There's like love of crochet and fiber and creating things, and all these skills that I had built up over like decades of school that, if you're that person that like went to school, did all these things, and then you're like, I'm going to be a mother now because that's what I'm called to do. And then part of you's like, oh, I have this societal guilt that I spent all this time on my education and I'm not using it. I don't have a job in that field. I'm a loser. You are not, because you are going to use those skills in so many other amazing ways in your life. And that's what's been awesome, is that I'm like, I'm using all of that and I'm using all of this and I put it together and here I am. And it's been such an amazing blessing. It's just, it's like joyful all the way around to use all of my brain on something that I love.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing.
I love that story. Like you say, it's just all of these different areas of your life that have just come together, and that's exactly what it.
Story. Yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly what it's been like for me, to be honest. I was teaching beauty therapy, and now I take my love of yarn and designing and photography and all of that, and my teaching ability with my YouTube channel, and that's all merged into one. And hearing your story of how it all evolved is just amazing. I love that.
Yeah. I mean,
I really do.
I really thank Lorene for all of that. And I mean, it's just been great, and I've done other, I'm still constantly checking in with like business coaching and little things here and there. And, like when I was like, I really need to increase my price, after the first year or so, and feeling bad about that because I'm a really cheap person. And so, increasing my price, I was like, I wouldn't do that, but that's the point, the point, like your audience is not you.
Yeah.
For a tech editor, at least for me, or at least if I do need a tech editor, I understand what's going into it. And so, for me, I had to be told that my price is paying for all that back education that I've already acquired. I have those skills, and that's what people are paying for. And they're paying for the efficiency of my time and hopefully the quality of work that I can return, and things like that. So
absolutely.
I think a lot of us can have imposter syndrome when you try to put a price tag on something that you do easily sometimes, and you're like, it didn't really challenge me that much to do it, but it took a long time to get to that point.
Yeah, this is the thing. People think if they enjoy it and they find it easy, that how can they charge people for doing that? But you must. You really must. That is your art. Like you say, there's years prior to getting to that point where you're putting those skills into it. So yeah, absolutely. So you design as well?
I've designed a few things, but I haven't written really a lot of patterns. I have written and sold some patterns to some publishers, from time to time. I have a few on my website that honestly were done really early and probably need their own tech editing done, like they're that old. And then otherwise, I'm constantly making things. So when I'm making things, half of what I make is probably from a pattern or a book, or maybe even something I tech edit that I'm like, God, I really like that. And and I just have to make it. And then other times I'm freehanding something, and that's designing. I may or may not write it down, but I'm constantly doing stuff. I'm just not focusing on publishing those patterns right now because I have enough workload on the editing side.
Yeah,
Thank God,
absolutely.
finally. Yeah.
But if you wrote your own pattern, would you get it tech edited by somebody else?
Yes, absolutely yes. And the reason why tech editing is important is because your brain will fool you. When you read your own work, your brain is automatically putting in what you wanted to be there. So it's not always easy to see your own typos. Like literally, your brain will trick you.
Yeah.
So it's almost impossible when you're making something to then go back and proof it and get it right and find everything. So it's always good to have a tech editor. I would definitely use a tech editor for other patterns if I, wanted to publish stuff and I cared about it, if I cared about it being a good finished product, which, I should. Yeah, I would definitely get it tech edited.
Yeah.
And I
100%.
have for those patterns, especially that I've sent to like actually be paid for and be published somewhere.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten them tech edited.
So important.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about gauge. Because this is kind of a big one, isn't it? I think it's one of those subjects which you either love or hate, but everybody's got to deal with it. Can you tell us, what is gauge?
I'm trying to find a ruler. You'd think I'd have a million tape measures. Whatever. So gauge is the measurement that tech editors will use to figure out, when I was saying how they'll evaluate, if you tell them what size a piece is going to be, and you tell them your gauge, and then you tell them to make this many stitches and this many rows, the finished product, if they meet gauge, should be what you told them in the first place. So gauge is always 2 dimensions. Okay, always. You have to tell them for a row by row or round by round piece that builds up, you have to tell them how many stitches fit within a certain dimension and how many rows or rounds fit in that same dimension. The times that is different is maybe for something that's worked in the round like this. Okay.
Yeah.
For something that's in the round, you can give a diameter after a certain number of rounds. And that will work for both the height and width because it's something round. That's what height and width is both included in diameter. So the way to measure that is you need a straight ruler. If you have a straight wooden or plastic ruler, I would say that would be best because I have seen tape measures stretch. So plastic tape measures can sometimes stretch. If you have more than one, it'd be interesting to like lay them all out and see if 4 inches is 4 inches on all of them.
Yes. Because you can't always trust it, I guess.
So that's why a straight plastic, metal, a straight flat ruler would probably be best. Lay it out on your piece, choose your dimensions. If you're going to do 4 inches, like we do here in America, that's what we would do. If you want to do 10 centimeters, fine. You just need to be clear that that's what you did. Put that measurement down first and tell your tech editor, I'm working in metric units. All my calculations were in metric first, and then I converted to inches. I've had issues with that before. So lay out your ruler at the 0 mark, put a straight pin down on your piece, and then at your distance, however far across you're going to measure, put another straight pin down on the same row or round if you can. And then count the stitches from one pin to the next. And you need to go all the way to the pin. And what I mean is our stitches have space between them. And that space belongs to the stitch.
Yeah.
So if you can't go from the beginning of one stitch to the or from the end of one stitch to the beginning of the other, because you're going to miss some space on the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. And
So,
those spaces, I guess, can equate to
it
a
can add
fairly
up.
good. Yeah.
Right. It can definitely add up. So if you're going to measure, start on one side of a stitch and make sure that your pin mark is at that point, and then count to that same side of a stitch all the way across. And in knitting, they can sometimes have half stitches because it's all like a V, so they can count a V and then half of a V.
Yeah.
Crochet doesn't do that.
No.
Really doesn't. So you need to count a full stitch and its space. And if that doesn't fit perfectly in 4 inches or 10 centimeters, for your own personal publication, it's okay to have that measurement be different. If 3.5 inches was better, do 3.5. It's usually better to have a longer, a greater distance of measurement than a shorter distance of measurement.
Right.
So if you need to go to 5 inches, fine. Do what works for the pattern. Unique things about gauge, and this is where I'll plug my website, fiatfibrearts.com. I have articles about gauge. Just search gauge and you will get the articles about it. And I have information on how to write gauge for various types of patterns. If you're working in a stitch pattern, if you're doing amigurumi and doing a 3-dimensional item, where do you put gauge? If you're doing something that's small, say this is like the entire size of the piece, you're not going to give like a 5-inch gauge for something that's only 3 inches when it's finished. Therefore, the finished measurement is the gauge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say you have a brilliant blog post about gauge and the video alongside it as well. I learned so much from that. So I'll make sure that we leave that in the show notes, because I highly encourage people to go and check it out. But I will also have a look at that other one talking about measuring different items, because personally it's something that I am still working on. I still haven't perfected that skill. So yeah, definitely I'll leave it so people can go and check it out.
Yeah, definitely. Because even if you think gauge doesn't matter, it still does.
It does.
So, in those cases, if it's something that's small, didn't have the finished measurement, if it was something that was larger, but you're writing it so that they could do it with any kind of yarn possible, still give them some idea of what you did and how you made what's in the picture.
Yes.
That's what they're going for. They want to make what you made. So you have to give them the information there, because what's the worst thing that can happen when someone buys your pattern and goes home and makes it? What's one of the biggest complaints you get from makers?
Yeah, it doesn't. This is not the same, or this is too big.
Work.
If they're making a,
it didn't work. Your pattern didn't work. It didn't make it right.
Yeah.
Gauge is your defense. Gauge is your number one defense to complaints, because the first question you ask is, did you meet gauge?
Yeah.
If they say no, I didn't bother with that, you can say, I'm happy to help you after you've worked to meet gauge.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you have any gauge disaster stories, or have you seen any gauge disaster stories? For me personally, when it comes to amigurumi, I make a lot of amigurumi for the Crochet Society boxes, and they always turn out bigger than what they should. And that is mainly because I like to use the hook that's in the box because it's so pretty and for demonstration purposes, but I know that I need to go down so many hook sizes in order to hit gauge. So mine always turn out a lot bigger. It's something I laugh about, but have you ever seen any disasters?
Yeah, I mean, so that's something that on a maker perspective, everybody can start to learn about themselves, what, how your stitching is compared to certain designers. Because personally, I never bothered with gauge if I was just making a hat or a toy or something. But one designer that I really like, I made her hat. I used the hook that she said. I used the yarn size that she said. I made the hat in the adult size, and it barely fit my 4-year-old. It was so small. I was like, how did this happen? And it was totally a gauge problem. So I know for her, I need to go up at least like 2 or 3 hook sizes if I don't want to bother measuring gauge. Now, as far as tech editing goes, I can usually see if there's a gauge issue when I do all my calculations.
Yeah.
So that's where, I take the designer's gauge, and then they said to make 150 stitches, and I compare it to their gauge. I'm like, well, 150 stitches at your gauge is going to come out to 40 inches, but you told them it was going to be 35 inches. So I'm getting something different. What's going on? Now, that's the easiest way for me and a designer to catch that something's off on the pattern. And that's why I do it. I will take the dimensions that they give me, and compared to their gauge, I will estimate how many rows and stitches I should see at the end of the pattern. Then I go through the whole pattern, and then I see how many they have, and I'll estimate what the distance is compared to exactly what they have, and see if those two numbers are similar. If it's off by like 1 or 2 stitches, that's probably fine, with like a small stitch count. But if it's when it's off by a few, like a half inch, a full inch, if this distance is really not meshing up, I'm telling the designer, I'm like, I'm getting this, you said that. And the challenge with the tech editor is that I can't always determine where the error lies, because it could be in so many different places in a pattern.
Yeah.
If you tell me to work certain stitches on row 5 of a pattern, and you're like, we got US and UK terms different, but I can still talk about doubles and trebles,
Yeah.
If you put a double in the next treble, and I'm like, I didn't do any trebles on the last row, I don't know what you're talking about, then I don't know if this row is incorrect or the previous row is incorrect. So I can just tell the designer, this is the math that I'm getting, and it's not matching what you have. So what's going on? Now, a lot of times it can real easily come back as, oh my gosh, I just copy pasted the wrong gauge on that pattern.
Yeah.
And that generally happens. Or I have had times where the designers had to go back and really put down their piece and remeasure and recalculate and come back with something else. And I'm like, that's perfect. So sometimes it works. Usually I can really figure it out in the math. And, when I really know that something's wrong is when either every single size is off by something. If every size is off by exactly the same, first I'll reevaluate my math, because I'm like, if they're all exactly the same and I calculated them all the same, maybe I missed something. So I'll double check it then. But if you have 9 sizes and like only 1 or 2 are wrong, but all the others are exactly correct, then I know that something's off with just 1 or 2 of those, because everything else worked and I calculated everything the same, according to the pattern. So I can really catch a lot of things in the math that way. So it's not so much disaster stories apart from like my own personal constructions. And I know that's totally my fault, kind of thing. And I would say I have more disaster stories when it comes to knitting, because I don't like having to take the time to knit a whole watch and measure it and then start the project. I'm like, let's just start the project.
Yeah. A lot of people are the same, I think. Yeah.
I know.
I remember when you tech edited one of my first patterns I sent to you, I remember getting all of these notes come back, and I was like, Oh my goodness. Like, I
Don't cry.
realized just
Don't
how
cry.
bad I realized just how bad I was at writing patterns. And over this last few years of, sending you my patterns, I've learned so much from you. So I honestly can't
Oh,
thank you enough, because I really have learned so much about pattern writing, what tech editing is, gauge, and all of these different things. So
yeah.
thank
And
you.
you're very welcome. And that is really my goal. I mean, that has like become half my goal in this whole endeavor, is to teach designers how to write. So
Hmm.
that's why I've written these ebooks. I've put out these little publications, and the first
Hmm.
one was a simple guide to grading crochet,
Got it.
because
I've got that one.
that was, I would be asked to grade a pattern. And if you don't know what grading is, that's when a designer can make a pattern for size small, or usually for themselves, but then to sell it, they want it available in multiple sizes. And so they'll
Mhm,
just, instead of making it in all those sizes, they'll calculate the math using gauge in a very
mhm,
precise manner to see how many stitches someone at like a 3X size or a 2X like me, I usually end up falling in that category, or extra small, how many stitches they have to make the same item. Personally, I don't like doing the grading because I feel like it affects the design of the item
mhm.
immensely, and I don't want to change your design.
Yeah,
So I don't really like doing grading unless you're going to already give me all the measurements of what it's supposed to be, and
yeah.
by that time you've done half the work already.
Mhm,
So I created my guide so that designers who are afraid of math can step by step walk through it and learn how to calculate their own gauge, figure out the body measurements of what they want the finished piece to be. And I step by step walk you through setting up your own spreadsheet in either Excel, or like Microsoft Excel, or in Google Sheets, to set up your spreadsheet and be able to calculate things on your own. I have had amazing success stories from that piece, from just that publication. I've had designers go from designing just scarves and bags to
mhm.
designing full range garments, and they're like, I never would have done this if it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And just like you said about learning how to write, I've
Mhm.
seen that in my clients as well. So
Yeah.
if you're new to tech editing, just know that the first few times you get something edited, it may take a little longer, and it may look a little more like chicken with his feet cut off walked all over it. It's like, there might look like there's more red ink or more errors. But as you learn to write crochet better, you'll generally tend to find fewer mistakes later on. And a
Mhm.
lot of that is involved in just developing your own style and sticking with it,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
consistency is the biggest thing. And that
Mhm,
may have been a lot of the things that I saw in some of those early patterns, because if you write the first line with no spaces between the number and the abbreviation, but then the
mhm,
next line you got a bunch of spaces, I'm like, which way do you want to do it? One or the other. You
mhm.
got to pick.
Yeah.
We can't
That's
have
something
both.
I'm still guilty of. You're still like,
Yeah.
"Sarah Jane, which one do you want to do? Come on." You should
Right.
know this by
Right. And
But
for personal designers, for they're publishing their own stuff,
Mhm.
you can choose what you want to
Yeah.
do. You just want to do it the same so that people
Consistent.
come to expect the same thing from you.
Yeah.
And setting up your own personal style guide is usually best. You can have a lot of that information on your template that you use
Mhm,
for every pattern. A lot of designers will put some of the rules that they follow in their notes so that
mhm,
other people can understand it when they read it.
mhm.
And so if you have it in your notes for the reader, then you're also reminding yourself, oh, yeah, this is the way I'm writing it.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but if you're publishing with someone else, always follow their style guide first.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you have to really pay attention to them. Some of them are extremely detailed and some of them are not. And so
Mhm.
you have to kind of just go stick with whatever information they have in that publication style guide, follow it first, and then fill in your pattern.
Yeah, perfect. So I've got a feeling that we're going to have a couple of types of people here.
Oh, yeah.
People who are like, okay, I'm writing my own patterns, I need a tech editor. And then people who are like, I want to be a tech editor. So let's start with the people who are wanting to get a tech editor. Where do you find one? Obviously, you.
There's me. There are, there's generally groups, social media is a big thing. You could ask fellow designers who they use and recommend if they have a tech editor. You can go on groups and say, hey, I'm open to finding a tech editor, and see who jumps in. There are places where there may be some names listed out. The Tech Editor Hub is I think a great resource. It's been a great resource for me as a tech editor to converse with other tech editors. A lot of them are knit based, but they're trying to really expand more into crochet. So you could find a tech editor probably there. I've heard it Yarn Pond is sort of a testing group, and tech editors can put their names there.
Okay.
There are a few other designer community kind of things that have popped up in the last couple of years. I'm just not aware of all the names, but if you're trying to search for like designer groups and stuff, there's usually some tech editors have jumped on there to say, hey, here I am. So if you can't find one just by searching like crochet tech editor, you really should be able to find it by that. I was going to say, if you can't find it that way, you're not using the internet, right? But you really should be able to find something,
Yeah.
And then just like send them an email. I still get like cold calls, basically, what I think of it. I still get emails from someone that's like, hey, this is my first time. What do I do? Like on my website, at least, I have a header that's like, how to hire Emily. And you drop down, and here's how to buy your time. And then here's where you sign up on my calendar, because I finally got that organizational system out. And then they email me the pattern. And sometimes when I see these emails coming in, I'm like, somebody's coming, because I'll see a purchase and I'm like, I've never seen that name before. And then I'll see something pop up on my calendar. I'm like, and then the third email is like, hi, I'm Susie, and this is my first pattern to get tech edited up. Like, yay, I love you.
Amazing.
So it's really great, and you'll be able to find people. And so to flip onto the other side, for the person that wants to be a tech editor, when I started, there was not a lot of instruction about crochet editing, and there still is very little out there about crochet tech editing. There's information about knit tech editing, and it was another reason why I made my guide about grading crochet, because everything that I found about grading was about knitting. I'm like, there's certain things about crochet that are a little different that you need to think about. And so I wanted to get some of that into my book when I put it out there, because there just wasn't anything about crochet grading. And there's very little about crochet tech editing. So I created a course that's called How to Become a Tech Editor. And you could sign up for that. You could just, peruse the landing page for it. And there's a couple of sections of the course that you can look at. Now, part of the overlap is one of the sections that you can look at is where students that have taken the course have put their information, their contact information, when they're ready to take clients as tech editors. So that's one more place that you can look for a tech editor, is on my course page. Scroll to the bottom of the available to the course listing. And then there's one that's like, it's going to be the only thing available to a viewer that hasn't purchased the course. So any designer, anybody can look at that and see names of people and what kind of things they're willing to tech edit at this time.
Yeah.
So my course is not entirely like how to tech edit every little different type of pattern, because it's like infinitely types of
Yeah.
patterns. So
Yeah.
it's how to become a tech editor. So I
Right.
tell people like what kind of programs I use on the computer, what type of equipment I need, what type of, how I organize getting clients and keeping track of clients. And I do go through tech editing. I do give them a checklist of what kind of things you want to be looking at and paying attention to in a pattern. And I do go through some sample patterns in various programs so that they can see how I use the track changes, or how I edit on a PDF, or how I do other things. So
Yeah.
that's why I called it How to Become a Tech Editor, not like How to Tech Edit Crochet.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
slightly different. Um, but it's been great. I mean, I've had several students. I also have you get 2 coaching calls with me when you take the course. We do one at the beginning and one at the end after you've gone through everything. It's less than $200. It's one of the like cheapest crochet tech editing or tech editing type things out there, but it is relying on you and
Yes.
your brain power coming into
Mhm.
it. I'm trusting that you're already coming to tech editing because you're hearing those things of like detail oriented, good at math,
Yeah.
likes doing stuff on the computer. You're going to be on the computer. And I keep doing this because I have double monitors now. And so I keep pointing to like the screen where I have my spreadsheet. And this is like, oh, it's been such a dream come true when I got a new computer and double monitors, because I got the
Yeah.
spreadsheet on one side and the pattern over here. And I'm like, you know. So, and also, if you like reading patterns, if you're like a
Yeah.
pattern hoarder and you like
Mhm.
reading them and just absorbing them, and you're like, I love all this information, and then you read a book and then you find an error and you're like, why? If
Yeah.
errors and patterns, published patterns in a book, make you just want to cry, you probably should be a tech editor.
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Well, I'll leave the details to that in the show notes of
Great.
this episode. But it's been amazing to have you on. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and I'm sure there's so many takeaways for people from this episode. But can you tell us how everybody can find you for a start, and if you have anything coming up for the rest of this year?
Oh, well, so fiatfibrearts.com, FIAT Fiber Arts, is the place to go. You can find out why I'm calling it Fiat. It's not the car. It's Latin. It's Catholic. It's totally like all about me, really. but that's my mission. And I said my mission is to have beautiful patterns, and it's really because beauty draws us to God, because God is the source of all beauty, and so that's part of my mission also. But fiatfibrearts.com, you can find everything: the blog post, how to hire me, how to get to the tech editor course. And then also this summer, I am going to be teaching at the Crochet Guild of America conference that's
Wow.
finally happening in New Orleans this year. I'm going to be teaching 4 courses, and one of them is like a ask me anything, how to write crochet tech editor kind of thing. And it's going to be an all-day class. And if nobody has any questions, which I seriously doubt, if anything, I'll go through some of my guides on the grading or just how to write a pattern, because one of the digital products I have on Gumroad is my selling platform, and you can get to that through the website, because I think it's gumroad.fiatfibrearts, is how to write the line of crochet, like the actual line of instruction, how to write that, because there's so many guides out there that are just like, here's the parts of a pattern, and they have title and materials and your gauge and notes maybe, and then they say, then write the pattern, and then the end. and
Yeah.
you're like, there's a big missing part here, you know?
Yeah.
So I wanted to fill in the blank. So that's what's in my How to Write the Line of Instruction guide,
Yeah.
which is again really cheap but gives you all that information so that you can figure out exactly what kind of style you want to use and then nail it all down, write it down, and do it exactly the same every time. You know, so that's in there. But I will be teaching in New Orleans this summer. The meeting, pretty sure, is in July. It's on my calendar, no promises. But Crochet Guild of America, if you're not a member already, you really should be. You got a lot of great resources there. And try to come to the meeting, come meet other people. It is so amazing to be in a hotel around hundreds of other people, mostly women, because that's who we are, you know, and everybody's stitching.
Yeah.
Everybody. And everybody's wearing things that they've stitched. And you can walk up to someone and be like, "Oh, how did you do that?" And like be touching on them and they don't care.
Yeah.
You know, or like,
want to show what they're making.
wow, what are you making? You know, and it is so enriching. It's so amazing. So if you haven't done that,
it's such a buzz being around people who just get it, isn't it?
Yeah. It is
so good.
Totally amazing. So I'm really excited about that. The other classes that I'm teaching are how to do embroidery on crochet, again, combining my loves. One is about how to line your crochet item with fabric. We're going to do different methods. And then the last one is about tying it tight with tassels and dangles and fobs and stuff. And we're going to get into doing more than just a half hitch. You know, something tight that really keeps your fringe and your tassel in place, and it's not going to get pulled out by your 5-year-old or something.
Yeah.
So,
I guess you're doing that from experience.
Yeah. So those are the things that we're going to be doing. And I'm just super excited about it. I can't wait.
It sounds amazing. Thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your knowledge with us. As I say, I'll leave everything in the show notes so that you can go and check out Emily. But thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too.